lesson for 7F and 7G. The date is Monday the 8th of March for the year 2021, and the title for your lesson is States of Matter. So the first thing to do is copy the date and the title. Please pause the video if you need any extra time to do this, as I will be changing the slide now. So first of all, we have our do now task, which is to copy and complete these sentences. Again, pause this video to give yourself enough time to answer all of these sentences. We will now go through the answers to filling in these sentences. So the sentences should read: density is a link between mass and volume. To measure the density of an object, we have density equals mass divided by volume. A material with a lower density than water will float, whereas one with a higher density than water will sink. Please make sure that you mark your work and make any corrections that you need to. Make sure that you pause the video if you need to give yourself enough time to correct and mark your work. Now we will be asking ourselves, what are the states of matter? There are three main states of matter. These are solid, liquid, and gas. They are made up of tiny particles that are always moving in some way. So you can see that the solid particles vibrate, the liquid and gas particles flow. The solid particles are in a regular arrangement. You can see that they are in rows and columns, so straight, and that means that they are in a regular arrangement. On the other hand, liquid and gas particles are in a random arrangement. That means that they are not in straight lines, they are all sorts in kind of all over the place. The difference between liquid and gas particles is that liquid particles still touch each other, whereas gas particles are spread out. Your next task is to match up the name of the state of matter to the correct picture and description. Make sure you pause this video to give yourself enough time to do the activity. We will now go through the answers. These are the correct matchings for the states of the matter names to the pictures. The solid picture is right at the bottom, the gas picture is in the middle, and the liquid picture is right at the top. Then when we match the pictures to the descriptions, the liquid description is at the top, the gas description is at the bottom, and the solid description is in the middle. Now we will talk about expansion and contraction. If a matter is heated, it gives the particles more energy. They use this energy to move more. So when the particles get more energy from being heated, they move around more. When the particles move more, they take up more space, so the matter itself gets bigger. This is called expansion. So you can see that on the picture on the right, you can see the particles and they are vibrating a lot, and it means that they are taking up more space. They are more spread out. The opposite of expansion then is called contraction. This is where matter gets smaller when it is cooler. So for example, you can see in the picture the particles are not vibrating as much, so they are not as spread out. So the main points are that matter expands, which means it gets bigger, when warmer, and it contracts, which means it gets smaller when it is colder. The particles themselves stay the same size, but they just spread out either more or less, depending on whether they contract or expand. Remember that expansion is when the matter gets bigger, they spread out more, the particles spread out more. Contraction is when the matter gets smaller because the particles spread out less. Bimetallic strips are made of two materials that expand at different temperatures. This means that one part or one material that is within the strip will expand before the other one. This creates a bend in the strip. Your next task is to copy and complete these sentences. So pause the video and give yourself enough time to copy and complete the sentences. We will now go through the answers. So, expansion is when matter gets bigger when it is warmer. This is because the particles themselves move more, so they spread out. Contraction is where matter gets smaller when it is colder. This is because the particles don't move around as much, so they do not spread out as much. And in fact, they then spread out less. The particles themselves stay the same size, they just spread out more or less. Make sure that you mark and correct your work. Pause the video to give yourself enough time to do that. Make sure that you make any corrections that you need to with a different coloured pen. Now we are going to talk about the difference between evaporation and boiling. So remember that there are three states of matter. We have solid, liquid and gas. Matter can move between these different states. So a solid can turn into a liquid, and a liquid can then turn into a gas. And the opposite can then happen as well. A liquid turns into a gas at its boiling point. So a liquid has a specific boiling point at which it turns into a gas. This process is called boiling. If a liquid turns into a gas before it reaches its boiling point, we call it evaporation. And that is the main difference between evaporation and boiling. Boiling is when a liquid turns into gas at the boiling point, whereas evaporation is when a liquid turns into a gas before the boiling point. During boiling, bubbles of gas form throughout the liquid. This is different to evaporation, where gas particles only leave from the surface, the top of the liquid. So you can see in the pictures on the right the difference between boiling and evaporation. Energy is needed for both evaporation and boiling because the particles need enough energy to break the forces of attraction between them. So you can see in the picture on the bottom right that we have different particles. These are in fact molecules because there's more than one atom there, type of atom. But you can see that there are little dotted lines between them. These are called forces of attraction and actually keeps the particles and molecules together. Different liquids have different boiling points. so they need different amounts of energy to break the forces of attraction. Your next task then is to sort these statements into each process, and your hint is that they could go into both. So there are two different ways that I think you can do this. You could either list them on two different sides of your page, one with evaporation and one with boiling. It's completely up to you if you do that. Or there is an easier way in which you can write all 6 statements out, and you can write next to the statement E or B, or E and B, depending on which process you think that they go with. It is up to you which one that you do. Make sure that you pause the video to give yourself enough time to do this. We will now go through the answers. So here I've sorted the statements into 2 separate columns. We have evaporation and boiling. Make sure that you mark your work and make any corrections that you need to. Pause the video if you need more time to correct and mark your work. Now we will talk about factors of evaporation. These are things that change how long evaporation will take to happen. We have already spoken about the boiling points. Different liquids have different boiling points, and it depends how strong the forces of attraction are between the particles. The other factors then are temperature, surface area, that is how large the surface of the water is. A really good picture for that is down below on the left. So you can see that water in a test tube has a lower surface area, smaller surface area, than water in a bowl, where it has a larger surface area. Another factor that will change how long evaporation takes to happen is wind and humidity. Humidity is the amount of water vapor in the air. An example of this is when we get condensation on windows. That is water vapor that has hit the window and turned back into liquid water because of the change in temperature. The last factor is impurities. These are things that are added into the liquid, for example water, and an example of an impurity is salt. Impurities, so for example salt added into water, will increase the boiling point of the liquid, making it higher. So the boiling point will be higher. So for example, if it was 90 degrees, it might now be 100 degrees. So it will increase the boiling point. Melting then is when a solid turns into a liquid. Impurities like salt will decrease the melting point of the liquid, making it lower. So for example, the melting point of water is usually 0 degrees. But if you add impurities to the water, it can decrease the melting point down to -10. This means that the ice will melt at a lower temperature, so the solid will become a liquid at a lower temperature. Your last task of this lesson is to copy and complete this list of the factors of evaporation. Pause the video to give yourself enough time to complete and copy this list. We will now go through the answers. The factors of evaporation are boiling point, temperature, surface area, wind, humidity, and impurities, for example, salt. That is now the end of the lesson. Thank you for watching and have a good rest of your day.